It's been for a long time now that we've been hearing reports of these grooming gangs in Britain, as they are called, perhaps too politely, an English euphemism, no doubt, because what we are talking about is gangs of mainly Pakistani men who've been picking up minor white girls for sex abuse and rape. Just listen to one of these girls.
I was 14, 15 when it started happening. I'd started college and I'd met some other people, and they started bringing me around people's houses, and then I was getting picked up randomly when I was drunk, or I was getting ploughed with alcohol by strangers, and then the abuse started getting worse, and I was then taken by a taxi driver and locked in a property for 4 days.
This has been going on systematically, continuously for years now, for decades, a generation and more. But over recent days, we have seen some new moves from the government here and from the courts to haul up more of these men. 43-year-old Pakistani Raja Zulkarnain had been convicted earlier in May of raping a 13-year-old girl with whom he then arranged some sort of marriage. He was sentenced then to 18 years in jail. He appealed against that order, but on appeal, that sentence was instead increased to 23 years. 7 other Pakistanis were convicted along with him for offences at this, among other locations, in Bradford. In another case, 65-year-old Mohammed Zahid from Manchester was sentenced to 35 years in jail, and 6 of his associates were given sentences of more than 12 years. Zahid was found to have tempted a 13-year-old girl with gifts and food and then raped her together with the others convicted. A prime problem with law enforcement in a lot of these cases has been with pointing the finger at Pakistani men. It's considered by some, and not least of course by Pakistanis themselves, as racist and Islamophobic, but that has begun to change to an extent. An audit of such cases conducted earlier this year by Baroness Casey on the orders of the Home Office has left no hiding place in identifying who primarily is responsible.
We will never shy away from the facts in these cases, and so following Baroness Casey's audit, her conclusions on the disproportionate role of Pakistani heritage gangs, and building on the work of the Home Secretary had already commissioned to improve ethnicity data in relation to these crimes, we have also committed to making it a requirement to collect ethnicity and nationality data of suspects who commit child sexual exploitation and abuse offences.
Conservative Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp put the picture across more starkly.
Young girls, some only 10 years old, were groomed and gang raped by men of predominantly Pakistani origin. Girls like Jane, just 12 years old when she was raped by an illegal immigrant. When she was found by police, instead of arresting the rapist, the police arrested Jane. Or Anna, only 15 years old, who repeatedly told social workers that she had been gang raped. Instead of helping her, they allowed her to marry her main abuser in an Islamic ceremony. The social worker even attended the ceremony. The ringleader of the Rochdale rape gang, Shabir Ahmed, was actually employed as a welfare rights officer by Oldham Council.
The MP pointed out in Parliament right here that local Pakistanis have been threatening officials and others who seek to bring proceedings against them.
I spoke to a mother whose daughter was raped by taxi drivers of Pakistani origin. When she complained to social services, they said that if she dared to raise the matter again, she would lose her daughter. And I spoke to a retired police officer who was himself told by a senior officer at the time to stop investigating abuse by Pakistani origin taxi drivers in Bradford because the police locally did not want to offend Bradford's Muslim community.
In the face of rising evidence of such practices, the minister announced in Parliament that a number of cases against such men that had been dropped are now being reopened for reinvestigation.
1,273 cases have now been identified for formal review, and with the new national operation has identified 216 highest priority cases that are those involving an allegation of rape, which are being accelerated as a matter of urgency.
Quite apart from the possible end of an escape route for at least many of these perpetrators, consider what the announced numbers indicate about the sheer scale of this problem. So 1,273 is only the number of the cases being reopened, and that would be among the total, which necessarily would be higher, and which itself would be only a fraction of the incidence of such crime, because it's well known, well recognized that the majority of such cases do go unreported. Cases report has more on the scale of these practices. In Little Telford town alone, the report points to more than 1,000 such cases over a 30-year period, with a high proportion of the perpetrators listed as Pakistani. In Rotherham, Pakistanis, who form 2.4% of the population, were 2/3 of more than 300 perpetrators found in a police operation. An earlier inquiry found at least 1,400 girls abused mainly by Pakistani men in Rotherham. Enter the Pakistani government with a PR job aimed at cleaning up this image. A group named the British Pakistani Foundation called a press conference recently to deny everything, and their claim was that it is in fact Pakistani men who are feeling victimized.
The data and the Home Office's own report from a few years ago has very clearly said there is no link that can be drawn, at least based on the evidence that we have at the minute or the data that we have at the minute, between ethnicity and the sorts of crimes that we're talking about in the context of sexual grooming, right? So these things are happening, and like I say, we condemn them unequivocally, but when they are taken out of context, they can have some very real and dangerous consequences for people. So yes, people are feeling unsafe off the back of that.
Whatever some unnamed Home Office report from years back may supposedly have said, the fact is that the Home Office has ordered a number of reports, and those have pointed a very different way. They have pointed primarily the Pakistani way. The government has now ordered a national inquiry announced by the Prime Minister in Parliament, but victims named to join the inquiry have quit on the grounds that of the two men shortlisted to head that inquiry, one was a former police officer, the other a former social worker. It is police officers and social workers who have been known to have let down victims and at times protected the perpetrators. In any case, there has been one inquiry after the other down the years, and now some doubts have been raised how far the Labour government will be able to pressure and proceed against concerned Labour-heavy councils, because the victims really are feeling let down.
Now I've lost everything and I've got nothing basically, and I'm just living alone, and it's 16 years down the line, and I'm still waiting for support. If people keep making more inquiries and don't make the changes recommended to them, how is anything going to change for us victims? I feel like it's more for a political stunt, and it looks like they're doing something by making an inquiry, but they're not actually doing anything if they're not willing to implement them changes.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.